Happy birthday to you.
Ambulance, hey, go ahead. Is he still awake and alert?
The Iowa countryside, rousing from its winter slumber, could be a definition of peace. Here, even guns seem benign, merely tools. But nowhere, not even this sea of snow-covered cornfields, is beyond hearing the rumbling thunder of violence. Police have been society's sentinels.
You can get IVC, SVC, right atrium. Okay.
Doctors and nurses just tried to save the victims.
We do a very good job. We save their lives, fix them. Unfortunately, they go back to the same wrong surrounding, wrong place. And then again, they come back to us to be fixed again.
Medicine and public health have accomplished wonders, from eradicating smallpox to chipping away at cancer and heart disease. And yet there stands an opponent unvanquished, perhaps even growing stronger. Violent death and injury, vicious or uncaring attacks resist cure, defy vaccination. A recent report from the Centers for Disease Control shows that in Louisiana and Texas, gunshot deaths are now more common than fatal auto crashes. Homicide is the leading cause of death among young black men. It's one of the leading killers of youth of all races. Nationwide, homicide and suicide claim more than 50,000 lives each year. To public health researchers, that's a call to action.
We're never going to eliminate suicides and homicides from this country, but there's no reason why we should accept the devastating rates of suicides and homicides we're experiencing today as an inevitable consequence of modern society.
A quest for understanding is underway. What are the intent, the circumstances, the devices that lead to violent death and injury? And so researchers look at guns, drugs, depictions of violence as a means to settle disputes in fiction and in fact.
You find children who are more fluent in how guns work and which guns are better, which guns are cheaper, which guns are faster than they are in the times table.
Some schools are trying to teach new lessons.
What you mean your shoes? Man, don't try that, man. These my shoes, man.
In hopes a pair of shoes will not spark violence, while other communities fight the tools of violent death. Unlike a campaign against cancer, for instance, when public health researchers probe violence, they find the disease is not their only opponent.
The problem is that the federally funded public health research is scientifically as obscene as anything funded by any other federal agency.
Whatever the roots of violence may be, there's something different about the United States. The homicide and intentional injury death rate here is double that of Northern Ireland, and it dwarfs the rate in other nations such as Canada, France, and Japan. The statistics may be abstract. The losses are personal. Mark Wilkins' sister was shot down on a street corner just a few blocks from their home.
And there's no way you can take that place. Nobody will be a mother to, my nieces but their mother.
Betsy Ross still feels the impact of the shot with which her husband ended his life.
For years, I could hear the gunshot when I thought about it, even though I wasn't there. But I could hear that shot. And I would spend time wondering what it looked like, but I didn't want to see him.
Sit up straight and look and feel as gorgeous as you are.
A belief that violence can no longer be tolerated unites researchers.
This is an emergency. These are our children.
The first steps toward understanding and treatment in our next report. Andrew Holtz, CNN Medical News. During quiet moments, trauma center nurses at Washington, D.C. Hospital Center like to step outside the ambulance entrance. But sometimes urban reality intrudes.
we hear the gunfire, we hear the automatic gunfire in the distance. And we'll end our conversation and slowly start inside because we know sooner or later we're going to get the call from GC Fire Department that a patient's on the way.
The coordinated frenzy of trauma care is the traditional medical response to violence. This time, it's a young man who was stabbed.
Correct.
He's lost blood. They try to replace it. His heart is not beating. They pry open his chest, reach in and squeeze his heart.
I have nobody else to cover that one, and nobody else to cover anybody else, so it stops now.
Eventually, there's no point to going on. There are other patients here and on the way. They say in the summer, it's even busier. Doctors and nurses leave the body to detectives.
When we go tell their families that they didn't make it, that's the hardest part for me.
It's a task the staff here must repeat too often. And the stories are often similar. This time, it appears there'd been some drinking, a dispute between acquaintances, and then a flash of fatal anger. Public health researchers hope that by understanding the similarities, they may learn how to prevent such violence. This death cannot be undone. But trauma teams save many lives, only to see some patients return with new wounds.
It's very frustrating because you feel like you're just chasing your tail.
They call the repeat customers graduates or frequent flyers.
It's obvious that patching up the holes in patients isn't enough. The solution lies beyond the doors of trauma centers.
172 is going to respond for gunshots, 17th in Minnesota.
A burst of activity breaks up what has been a relatively quiet Saturday night in Washington, D.C.'s 7th District.
2 stabbings and a sound of gunshots in about, what, 2 minutes?
Police Captain Joe Adamani says actually things are looking better in his sector of the district. Only 4 murders in 2 months, half the rate of a couple of years ago. There are more police here now, but like the trauma workers, police say traditional responses are not enough.
We need to address some of those things that cause the problem instead of waiting until something happens and then respond.
Foot patrols, improved housing, and other projects seem to be helping some.
How are you?
How you doing?
What you want to see?
I'm going to go in the building and see what's happening in there.
Do you agree with helping him and trying to do?
A youth task force is trying to stand against the pressure of gangs and the lure of easy drug money. Some members came over from the other side.
You see the obvious every day. There's only 3 ways. You're either going to die, you're going to get locked up, or you're going to go straight and make something out of yourself. There's no other choices about it. There's no other way about it.
Meanwhile, in the trauma center, until a way is found to prevent violence, workers will just have to continue sweeping up the blood and debris left by one violent act in preparation for the next one. Andrew Holtz, CNN Medical News, Washington. Mark Wilkins was about to go bowling when he'd heard there'd been another shooting in his Washington, D.C. neighborhood.
And I was wondering, who was it this time? Who got shot this time?
It was his sister, another victim of a drive-by shooting.
I couldn't believe that. And I was like, this violence up here is outrageous and it needs to be stopped.
Even before his sister's death, Wilkins had joined a youth task force to oppose violence. He doesn't want to lose any more childhood friends.
It's rough when you're growing up with somebody. You see this person every day. You walking, talking, and laughing with this person. And they're dead the next day.
For young men in this neighborhood, the leading cause of death is homicide. But violence is not just a big city threat.
You might not think about it now, but if you don't think about it now, you will eventually, and you don't want to have it come the hard way.
When it starts getting dark, that's when I start heading in the house, because my mother, she don't like me being out.
Jean Crutcher lives more than 500 miles from Washington, D.C. He's just 13 years old, but he's already learning to deal with the threat of violence.
Down there, they be selling crack and marijuana and stuff like that.
His home is in the heart of Middle America, Dayton, Ohio, On All America's City Way, the convention center just hosted the Ohio Pork Congress. Dayton is no murder capital. Nevertheless, its children are in danger, often from what seems an unlikely source. The body count of violent death and injury reveals the curtain between friend and enemy is often thin. Nationwide, FBI statistics show most homicides involve friends or family, and arguments are linked to twice as many homicides as are robberies or drug-related crimes. The sparks of violence often seem trivial.
There is something about the inability to handle anger that we all face, without exploding and losing control.
A survey showed at this Dayton middle school, 1 of 5 students knew someone who was murdered. So researchers put violence on the health curriculum alongside sex education and nutrition.
All of these health areas have come to be accepted as a normal part of what kids learn in school. Why not violence prevention in light of the statistics?
Giving it, taking it, and working it out.
This is a class about dealing with anger.
You gotta get it together now. No, you don't hear what I'm saying, do you? No, I'm not through. Just listen to me. No. This ain't gonna work.
This program is about dealing with anger in ways that will let you get your point across or get what you want without getting in a fight.
We have 2 volunteers to do first role play. All right, Letitia and Jean.
The basic lessons are simple, but many youngsters haven't learned them.
I don't too much appreciate you coming up and calling me a punk.
Well, that's what you is. I think you a punk. You a punk.
John Crutcher says the class has helped.
Well, I got in trouble a whole lot more than I do now. I think I settled down more.
The program, called PACT, for Positive Adolescent Choices Training, is in its 3rd year.
We're able to significantly reduce fighting incidents to help anywhere from 3 out of 4 to 4 out of 5 children that we work with.
For teachers, that change is more than just a line on a researcher's chart.
It's astonishing because in some cases, students actually go to the classroom and they may have a disagreement with the teacher. And they readily use the skills that they've learned in the PACT program, and the teachers are really impressed with it.
But on the streets, people still follow what Mark Wilkins calls the gangster way of life.
They think that's how they're supposed to live, and no matter who dies or, who's crippled or who, has to pay for it, that's just too bad.
Deadly impulses. In our next report, Andrew Holtz, CNN Medical News. The rhythms of livestock and crops set the pace of Marvin Hotz's world.
Well, spring and summer long, we see the new pheasants hatch, we see pheasants come around, rabbits, things like that.
His farm in Lone Tree, Iowa is a long way from the big city, and a long way from big city fears of guns and violence. To Marvin Hotz, his guns are a source of pride. He teaches gun safety classes, and he makes his own ammunition. He uses his guns for sport and as tools, farm implements to protect his crops and animals, legitimate needs in his view that may be threatened by proposals to restrict guns.
Okay, might as well load up.
For him, storing all guns at a gun club, for instance, just wouldn't work.
I mean, I would hate to have to maybe run clear to a gun club just to get a firearm because maybe I have trouble with a fox or coyote or something like that, maybe getting into livestock, and I want a gun, right away.
On farms, firearms are used for pest control and dealing with animal predators and things like that. They have more of a business function than they often do in cities.
The relationship between guns